What's up, guys? Welcome back. This is 7.33. I am Mr. Rip, and I wanted to go over some of the changes that have happened with the last patch, and there's a lot of them, but we're going to focus on the most important ones. So the first thing that I would say is the most important of all, and really everything else should take a backseat to it, are these twin gates. These dramatically change the game, because any team at any point can just TP here, right, and show up at either Roche pit using this. Because we're either just at Roche right here, or we jump up here, and now we're at Roche over here. See? Overall, the game feels like incredibly snowbally at the moment, and I think it is because of these gates right here. Because basically, if you win your lane here, like let's say, you know, we're Radiant and we double kill the Dire offlaners, we can just come over here and jump up here and then go gank the Dire safe lane pretty easily. So, like, theoretically, any double kill in a lane can actually turn into a 4v2 in the opposite lane, and you actually now need to kind of think of the two side lanes as being adjacent to each other. So keeping control of these gates and knowing like who's walking through them is going to be hyper important. And I would actually suggest, like, once the mid game happens and like your basic lane structure is broken down, I kind of think you should keep these warded almost at all times. It's like it's that important. Now, the one downside to this thing though is that because this is a high ground right here, you really like warding it and de-warding it is super basic. Because you see, like, there's no way to see up here really. So if I want to ward this, I have to ward it up here. And that's just it. I mean, you know, you could sentry outside to try and get a little bit greedier vision, like, you know, something like, let's see, like maybe this, so we can see the whole high ground here. But you're just gonna have to put an observer on top here. And I would recommend, probably the best position to put it is gonna be on this corner, so that it very easily spots the Roche pit. If you put it over here, you don't get like complete vision. And it's kind of the same thing over here. I actually don't know if blinking across the map is faster than using gates. But if you ward here, you might not actually see the Roche pit. So you probably want to put it on this right side. It does make it easier to de-ward, but if somebody wants to de-ward this, it's pretty easy to just de-ward it anyway. So, not a huge deal. Now, outposts are a little bit different because each team has two extra outposts. So the Radiant has this outpost right here, and this outpost right here. Dire has their safe lane outpost and their main jungle outpost. Now, the main difference here is that these main jungle outposts they function just like the old ones. Once somebody destroys a tier 2, they can capture your outpost. Another big difference, though, is that outposts don't provide vision, they don't provide true sight, and they don't provide XP anymore. So they are just TP locations. That's it. But the safe lane, or the side lane outposts, are never capturable. And I'm actually wondering if this is something they're going to change at some point, because it means that no matter what position you are in the game, you could be fighting mega creeps. You can just at any point TP out here. Like, let's say it's nighttime, you know, and Roche is up here. I can just TP here, I can jump in the gate, and I can contest Roche. Super fast. You know, obviously, you know, a good team is going to be defending this, but it is like very quick to get to Roche from basically anywhere on the map, because regardless of which side Roche is on, you just use the gate, you jump over there, and you're there. So really pay attention to these. These redefine the entire game for me. These are massively important. And I think the nomenclature hasn't settled yet on how exactly people are going to talk about these. Like, I say port, warp, jump, gate, you know, like, oh, I'm going to warp top, or I'm going to gate top, or whatever. I'm going to use the gate to go top. And I think it's also funny trying to ping that you want to go through these things. You know, like if you're, let's say you're like, you're over here on their Tormentor, right? And you're like, cool, let's jump across the map and go to our own Tormentor. And you got to draw like this. It just looks really funny. So, I don't know. I assume at some point like a meta will evolve around talking about the gates, right? Roche, by the way, will bounce back and forth. So at daytime, he'll be down here on the Radiant side, and at nighttime he'll be up here on the Dire side. So it's every 5 minutes, Rosh is going to switch locations. That's, I would say, the second biggest change, because Rosh is still effectively the same thing, except Rosh will not drop a shard anymore. So now, if you want to get an Aghanim's shard, the next big thing are these Tormentors that spawn at 20 minutes. So there's one over here on the Radiant side, and one over here on the Dire side. So if you want to get your free Ag shard, that's where you're going to go for that. Other minor things that have added, these Watchers right here function like little capturable wards. Once you grab these, they stay up for 7 minutes, and if the enemy comes up and captures them, they'll be destroyed for 2 minutes, and then they'll respawn and be neutral. If nobody touches them, they'll just respawn, or they'll revert to neutral after 7 minutes. So they're kind of sprinkled throughout the map. There's one here, or one here in the Radiant jungle, one here in the triangle, and then one here on the Tormentor. And it's the same thing for Dire. They have one on their Tormentor, one in their triangle, one up here in their main jungle, and then one over here next to the gate. So these are going to be pretty important if Rosh is concerned, but other than that, I honestly think their placement is not super relevant. They're so easy to just walk up and decapture or destroy that I really haven't seen them make a massive impact yet. I think wards are still dominant, because the thing is about a Watcher, if you capture it and the opponent walks up to it and the color doesn't match their team, then they know you have a ward there. So they immediately have information, versus they don't know that they're under a regular observer ward. So these are like kind of like wards. This is how far they see. It's not too great, but the opponent knows they've been spotted, so they can use that information, you know, to either not screw up their gank or to just cap it themselves. So they're really not like tremendously important. Next thing is these Lotus Pools. Every 3 minutes, this will spawn a little healing Lotus, which is kind of like a Fairy Fire / Mango, but with no passive regen. They're fully shareable. You can even use them on your teammates out of your inventory. The neat thing about these is they stack. So if you get 3 of them, they turn into a Great Healing Lotus. 3 Great Healing Lotuses turn into 3 Greater Healing Lotuses. And if you have 3 of those, and you get the cheese from Roshan, you get a block of cheese, which gives you a 500 health regenerating shield, which is pretty cool, but probably a lofty goal. You're probably going to want to use these Lotuses that you get to actually help you win the game before that. We still have bounty runes. The locations are a little different. So this is the Dire spawn. This is the Radiant spawn. Note that the Radiant spawn is on low ground here, and the Dire spawn is on high ground. So I think the meta is going to be for Dire to try to contest this rune, and Radiant to maybe take this rune and this rune or something like this. I mean, Radiant could take this one too, but I think if one of these 2 runes was going to get contested, I think this is the easier one to grab, because you don't have to walk up a high ground to get to it, right? So we'll see how that affects the balance between like Radiant and Dire. River runes are the same thing. You know, it's still bounty rune spawn, and then every 2 minutes, or it's going to be a new rune. So it'll be water rune on 4 minute, and then a power rune 6 minute onwards. The difference is here is that they actually have to cycle through, so you can't get a duplicate spawn twice in a row. So if it's like DD, then it's illusion, then haste, then invis, then regen, then it'll go all the way back and you can get like a DD again, you know? It has to cycle through all of them. One big difference though is these wisdom runes. So if you're a support player, you really need to be paying attention to these. So these spawn every 7 minutes, and there's no more Tome of Knowledge. So it's kind of like if the enemy could buy your Tome of Knowledge from your shop, it hurts really bad. So I think if you're, you know, position 4 or position 5, you do really want to be thinking about these wisdom runes, because they give a significant amount of XP. Like, you know, if you're level 4, level 5, these are usually going to be an entire level. It's kind of just like a tome. But yeah, one that your teammates or the enemy team can steal super easily. And I think if you're a position 5, you know, laning down here in bottom, you have to go very far out of your way to go get this. It's not like you just buy the tome and send it to yourself. And I'm still evaluating how worth it is to, you know, leave your lane around 7 minutes and go across the entire map to pick up this wisdom room. Because they're even far away from the gates. So even if you use the gate to come up here and then walk down here, it's still like you just walked across the whole map anyway. So what it might be, the meta might evolve to where the position 5 tries to steal the opponent's wisdom rune so they don't go too far away from their own lane, and the position 4 backs up to take their own wisdom rune. And that's just maybe how that works. But they are super important. Don't forget about them. And core players, just you got to think of these as the tome of knowledge. Like, you know, please let your supports have these unless you're very close to like level 20 or level 25 or something like that. Then, you know, you guys should probably take them. But other than that, like, wisdom runes and tome of knowledges are meant to be like a catch-up mechanic for underleveled heroes, right? So they probably should go to the underleveled heroes. Let's see. The triangle is the same as it was last patch, except now on this like side lane. So I'm calling this like the off lane here.
Your middle tower
has an ancient spawn in it as well. So if you are an ancient farming carry, you know, like Medusa or whatever, you have twice as many ancients to farm. So that's pretty cool. The jungle functions pretty much the same way, except now jungle creeps have scaling abilities where they didn't have before. That's really the only difference. Normally they'll only go up to level 3 abilities unless you have a Chen on your team, and then if he gets them and he has Shard, then they go to level 4. And that's about it. The other major change to the jungle, though, is that there's this side jungle that's above the off lane, or the Radiant safe lane, and below, or above the Dire safe lane, below the Radiant safe lane. And this is a really safe area to kind of jungle in. There are some good ward spots up here. But it's kind of hard to establish really good vision of this entire edge of the map. And it's also, in some cases, really easy to stack multiple camps at once because they're so close together. So this can be a good fallback position. Like if you are a jungling carry, you kind of always have these side areas. And I think a lot of people are forgetting that these are actually options because it's, you know, 5 camps up here on both sides. That's double the jungle, basically. Like the old jungle had like, what, 6 camps in it? No, it had 5 camps in it. So there's twice as much jungle space now on both sides. So you get 5 camps in here, and you get 5 camps in up here. Twice as many jungling camps. The flip side to that, though, is that the game is so fast right now, is that I think heroes that are relying on getting to late game are kind of, more often than not, just not going to get there. Because it's so quick to, like, win a fight here, jump up here, win a fight here, take this other tower. You know, you get to secure all the objectives. There's a lot less emphasis on mid right now, and I think it's because there's just so many things happening in the side lanes. Because you've got an outpost, you've got a gate, you've got a watcher, you've got a Lotus Pool, and you've got a Roche Pit. It's a lot of things to be controlling over here. So I think the emphasis is going to switch a lot more to good laning heroes that want to stay in lanes a lot. And if you end up losing your lane, like, you better hope you're able to jungle, because it's kind of, you run out of space to farm real quick because both side lanes are so accessible to both teams. It's also really difficult to establish like complete vision control in any area except for like the triangles. The triangles remain like pretty easy to kind of deward the entire area. Like if you really want to make sure the enemy team like doesn't have vision here, you're gonna have to spend a lot of sentries to do it, but you can kind of do it, you know. Versus trying to deward this entire jungle is like next to impossible. It's just there's way too much space here. So I think these main jungles are actually much less safe than they were before. I have seen a couple games where people end up kind of farming this high ground jungle a little bit, which is sort of like the old version, but even that is larger than it used to be, and it's just really hard to keep this whole thing dewarded. So it's kind of like the whole game is getting just pushed outwards, you know? If you were a jungler before, now you're jungling on the edge of the map. Like if you were fighting in the lanes, now you're fighting in like both the lanes and the side jungles and all this stuff. So it's kind of crazy right now. It might settle out though. And while there's a lot of objectives to be thinking about, I'd say a lot of them are just not super duper important. The main ones are obviously going to be, you know, kills, towers, Roche, barracks, right? Tormentors are nice, but Tormentors are nice, definitely. They're like a mini Roche. I would think about those a lot. Lotus Pools are nice early, mid-game, but unless you're like stockpiling them, they don't make a tremendous difference. And like I said, the Watchers are just like not really placed in super relevant locations, and they're too easy to deal with, so they don't really have a dramatic effect. I have noticed also that people are tending to ignore they're ignoring Watchers a lot. Like they walk right past them without capturing them. They're forgetting about Lotus Pools. I've noticed bounty runes have been stacking up a lot in the jungle. People just like completely forget about them because there's so much other stuff going on. And wisdom runes will occasionally they'll sit there for a long time, and especially tormentors will sit there for a really long time and no one captures them, which is kind of funny. Right now it seems like with the BKB nerfs, magic damage is on the up and up. So like the popular heroes right now, I've seen a lot of like Juggernaut, Outworld Devourer, things like that. Like these heroes that really don't need a lot to like get started and start killing people, but also rely a lot on not physical damage, right? Like I think we're going to enter a meta where magic damage in general is just more viable because BKB doesn't completely protect against it like it used to. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. But I think like heroes like Leshrac will probably get really popular, you know? Anybody that just spams a lot of magic damage. Like we've already seen like the right-click Zeus build that just does a crazy amount of magic damage, and I think like right now that's like first pick, first ban worthy. One thing about the safe lane, I think the safe lane should actually, I think the bot lane should get a ward. I think the bot lane should get a ward over the off lane right now because there's this cliff here. And for some reason, like there's this cliff here and there isn't one on the opposite side. So Dire doesn't have a cliff in between their two towers. In fact, the only cliff Dire has is like over here, and they have another one right here. Whereas Radiant has one right here and one right here. And I don't really understand why they decided to make it so asymmetrical. Like if you notice here, Radiant has a Watcher here, an Outpost here, right? So Watcher on the left, Outpost on the right, and then they have a cliff here. But Dire has also a Watcher on the left and an Outpost on the right, and then a cliff. Why are these like copy pasted? You would think that they would be flipped, right? You would expect the cliff to be over here and like the Outpost to be here and a Watcher to be over here. I don't understand why they made it asymmetrical, given that Roche can now be on either side of the map anyway. It seems like you'd want to make the map a lot more symmetrical, right? But I don't know, maybe that's something they'll change at some point. One thing about the TP gates and the Lotus Pools is that I think these are going to kind of function like the old side shop. So whoever gets pushed past or up to the Lotus Pool gets a pretty big advantage because they can get over here and steal all the Lotuses, right? And there's one that's combined, so I'll show you real quick. Here's a regular Lotus, and here's a Great Healing Lotus. I think this is going to be like the old side shop. You're going to want to be able to push up to it to grab the Lotuses and then come back. This is like a mini objective in and of itself. And it's kind of the same thing with the gates here. Because if you get pushed up, it becomes easier to come up behind you. Although on the flip side, if you push all the way up to their tower, it's actually a lot harder to like get a gank off through the gates because they have to travel so far. So there's this weird place you want to be where you want to have access to the Lotus Pools, you want to have vision of the gates, and you want to be able to use them, but you want to be careful about the enemy coming through as well. Anytime there's like a teleport mechanic in a game like this, I think it really messes things up, and it's hard to look at the map in a conventional way anymore. Because this is a doorway, and both safe lanes are effectively just adjacent now, right? One last thing, be careful not to die to the Tormentor, because I've definitely died 2 or 3 times now. I just wasn't paying attention when someone was doing the Tormentor, and I just died. I wasn't even attacking it. I was just standing nearby, and I died. It was pretty funny. I want to put a list of all the new timings up on the screen for you guys, so you can see here. And this, a lot of this stuff is the same, but there's a little bit of extra stuff now. So every 2 minutes, we're going to get river runes. That's either bounty runes or power runes, depending on how far in the game it is. 3 minutes, we've got bounty runes and Lotus Pools spawning. 5 minutes is catapults and the time shift, so day to night, night to day. And then 7 minutes is wisdom runes, right? That's every interval of all those minute marks. That's going to happen. And then right here is a breakdown of the first 20 minutes of all the unique spawns. So we're going from 0 minute bounty runes, 1 minute the camp spawn, 2 minute water runes, 3 minute Lotus Pools, bounty runes, 4 minute water runes, 5 minute catapults, time shift. That also means Roche is moving across the map. And then in 6 minutes, we have bounty runes, power runes, and Lotus Pools all spawning. And then at 7 minutes, we have the wisdom runes and neutral items start spawning. 8 minutes power rune, and it just goes through like that, right? So there are a ton of little objectives for you to do. So I think if you're like a position 4, position 5, like there's actually a lot to keep you active. You really shouldn't be just getting stuck like sitting under your tower with your carry, you know, anymore, because there's kind of always something for you to do. You can go grab a watcher, you can go grab a rune, you can go try and steal their rune, you can jump through the gate and go for a gank on the other lane. Like, being static in the early game, I think, is going to be kind of a death sentence because of how much value there is on the map now. So have a look at all these, try and incorporate them into your gameplay, and let me know what you guys think. I want to make more videos on the new patch. I need to do a overall like hero one as well. And check me out on Twitch at Mr. TV. I stream every weekday, and I'll leave a playlist at the end of the video of my other Dota coaching and things like that. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.